When, ladies and gentlemen, there is a season in every person's life that does not require applause, it requires silence. We live in a world where people feel the need to announce everything, every plan, every goal, every move. But the truth is this: when what you expose too early, you weaken. What you protect, you strengthen. Power is not in noise. Power is in preparation. When a seed does not shout while it is growing beneath the soil, yet when it rises, it becomes unstoppable. Today, I want to share with you 5 rules that will change everything if you have the discipline to live by them. Not everyone deserves to hear your dreams. Some people don't have the capacity to understand what you are becoming. When you speak too soon, you invite doubt, criticism, and unnecessary resistance. Learn to protect your vision like a treasure. Speak less, work more. Because vision is fragile in its early stages, but unstoppable when fully developed. Time is life. Every minute you waste, you don't get back. Every distraction you entertain is a withdrawal from your future. Powerful people don't just manage time, they command it. They decide what deserves their attention and what doesn't. If you want to grow powerful, you must become ruthless with your time. The strongest foundations are never visible. While others are talking, you should be building. While others are showing off, you should be improving. There is something powerful about a person who disappears for a season and returns transformed. Let your results make the noise, not your mouth. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you are meant to become. It is easy to talk about success it is difficult to wake up early, stay focused, and remain consistent when no one is watching. But understand this: what you do in private determines what happens in public. If you cannot control yourself, you cannot handle power. Everything valuable takes time. We live in a generation that wants instant success, but real power is built slowly, intentionally, and patiently. When you learn to wait, to prepare, to endure, you position yourself for something greater than quick success. You position yourself for lasting impact. So stay quiet. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you are working on something too important to announce. Grow powerful. Not for attention, but for purpose. And when the time is right, you won't need to tell people who you are. Your life will speak for you. Silence is not weakness, it is strategic strength. In a world that constantly pressures you to speak, to react, to prove yourself, choosing silence is an act of control. Many people mistake quietness for fear, insecurity, or lack of ability, but in reality, silence often reflects a deeper level of awareness and discipline. It means you understand that not every moment requires your voice, and not every situation deserves your energy. When you are silent, you are not absent, you are observing, processing, and positioning yourself. Noise is often the companion of insecurity. People who feel the need to constantly explain themselves, defend their actions, or announce their next move are usually seeking validation. But strength does not beg to be recognized. When it develops in private and reveals itself in results. Silence allows you to grow without interruption. It protects your ideas from unnecessary criticism and shields your focus from distraction. What you keep quiet, you give time to mature. There is power in not reacting immediately. When you respond too quickly, you often respond emotionally. But when you embrace silence, when you create space to think, to evaluate, and to respond with intention rather than impulse, this is where true strength is formed, when not in loud reactions but in controlled responses. When a person who can remain calm and composed while others are overwhelmed by emotion is a person who carries authority. When silence also gives you the advantage of insight. When you speak less, you hear more. You begin to notice what others miss. When the patterns in behavior, the intentions behind words, the opportunities hidden in plain sight. While others are busy trying to be heard, when you are gathering information. And information, when used wisely, becomes power. The quiet person in the room often understands more than the loudest one because they are not distracted by the need to perform. In addition, silence strengthens your focus. Every time you talk unnecessarily, you scatter your energy. When every time you explain your plans to the wrong people, you risk losing momentum. But when you stay quiet, when your energy remains concentrated, your goals become clearer, your direction becomes sharper, and your execution becomes stronger. Silence eliminates the noise that competes with your purpose. It also builds an element of mystery, and mystery commands respect. When people are naturally drawn to what they do not fully understand. When you do not reveal everything about yourself. When you do not constantly update the world on your progress, you create a presence that speaks without words. When your actions begin to carry more weight because they are not diluted by excessive talking. When you finally do speak, people listen because they know you do not speak carelessly. Silence is also a test of maturity. When it takes strength to hold your tongue when you are misunderstood. When it takes discipline to walk away from arguments that do not serve your growth. When it takes confidence to let your work speak instead of your words. Anyone can react, but not everyone can restrain themselves. When, and restraint is a form of power that cannot be easily taught. It must be developed. Most importantly, silence allows you to build without pressure. When no one is watching closely, you are free to make mistakes, to learn. When, and to improve without judgment. You are not performing for an audience, you are developing for a purpose. And when the time comes for your results to be revealed, they will carry a weight that words never could. Silence is not about hiding, it is about preparing. It is not about shrinking, it is about strengthening. It is the space where growth happens, where clarity is formed, and where power is built. Growth happens privately before it is revealed publicly. What people celebrate on the outside is only the visible result of an invisible process that took place in silence. When every strong foundation is built where no one is watching, and every meaningful transformation begins in a place of obscurity. When the problem is that most people want the recognition without respecting the process. They want the spotlight without enduring the preparation that gives them the capacity to stand in it. Real growth is uncomfortable, and it is often lonely. It requires you to face yourself, your weaknesses, your habits, your limitations, without distraction. When, in private, there is no audience to impress, no applause to motivate you, and no external pressure to keep you going. What drives you in that space is discipline, vision, and a deep understanding of what you are becoming. That is why private growth is so powerful. It is pure. It is not influenced by opinions, trends, or the need for validation. When growth is hidden, it is protected. The early stages of development are fragile, just like a seed beneath the soil. If exposed too soon, it can be damaged by doubt, criticism, or even your own fear. But when it is nurtured in private, it gains strength. It develops roots before it reaches for visibility. By the time it becomes visible, it is already strong enough to withstand pressure. There is also a level of focus that comes with private growth. When you are not busy announcing your progress, when you are free to actually make progress, your energy is not divided between doing the work and talking about the work. Instead, everything you have is directed toward improvement. This creates depth in your development. You are not just growing on the surface. When you are growing at the core, private growth also builds authenticity. When no one is watching, you are forced to be real with yourself. You cannot fake discipline in private. You cannot pretend consistency when there is no one to see it. When what you do in those moments becomes your true character. And character is what sustains success when it finally becomes visible. When. Another powerful aspect of private growth is timing. When you allow your development to reach maturity before revealing it, when your results carry impact. People often wonder how success appears suddenly. But what they are really seeing is the public unveiling of a long, hidden process. The years of preparation, the quiet sacrifices, the consistent effort, all of it surfaces at once when. And it creates the illusion of overnight success. Private growth also teaches patience. When. It trains you to trust the process even when there is no immediate reward. It shifts your focus from quick results to lasting transformation. You begin to understand that what is built slowly is built strongly. And when your growth is strong, it does not collapse under pressure. There is a discipline in keeping your development to yourself. When? It means you are not dependent on external encouragement to keep going. It means your motivation comes from within, not from the approval of others. This kind of independence is powerful because it makes your progress consistent. You are not moved by praise, and you are not stopped by criticism. You are driven by purpose. When growth finally becomes public, when it speaks for itself, you do not have to explain it or defend it. People see the difference in your mindset, your behavior, your results. When what was once hidden becomes evident, and it carries a weight that words could never achieve. That is the reward of private growth. When it produces a public impact that cannot be ignored. Growth that happens privately is not slower, it is stronger. It is deeper, when more stable and more sustainable. It prepares you not just to reach a higher level, but to remain there. Because by the time the world sees your growth, you have already become it. Not everyone deserves access to your plans. When? Just because something is important to you does not mean it should be shared with everyone around you. When? There is a difference between being open and being exposed. Wisdom is knowing what to reveal, when to reveal it, and who is qualified to hear it. Many people lose momentum not because their plans are weak, but because they shared them with the wrong audience. Every vision begins in a sensitive state. In the early stages, it is still forming, still developing, still gaining strength. When you speak about it too soon, you place it in an environment where it can be misunderstood, criticized, or even discouraged. Not everyone has the capacity to see what you see. Some people will project their fears onto your ideas. Others will question your ability based on your past. And some may even pretend to support you while quietly hoping you fail. This is why access must be earned, not given freely. Your plans are valuable. They are a blueprint of your future, when a reflection of your potential or your energy, and a direction for your energy. When you share them carelessly, you risk diluting their power. Too many opinions can create confusion. Too much external input can weaken your confidence. When what started as a clear vision can quickly become distorted when it is handled by people who were never meant to shape it. When there is also a level of protection that comes with silence. When fewer people know what you are doing, there is less interference. You are free to move at your own pace, to make mistakes, to adjust your strategy without pressure. You are not performing for an audience, you are building for a purpose. This allows you to stay focused. When? Because your attention is not divided between execution and explanation. Not everyone in your life is assigned to your future. When? Some people are only meant to be part of your present, and others were only meant to be part of your past. When? If you give everyone access to your plans, you give them influence over something they were never designed to handle. And influence, when placed in the wrong hands, can become a limitation instead of a support. When? It is important to understand that support is not always loud and opposition is not always obvious. When? Some of the most damaging responses come from subtle doubt, disguised as concern. When? Phrases like, "Be realistic," or "Are you sure you can do that?" may seem harmless, but they can plant seeds of hesitation in your mind. When? If your vision is not yet strong, those seeds can grow into fear. That is why you must be selective. The right people will not just hear your plans, they will strengthen your belief in them. When? Keeping your plans to yourself also builds internal strength. When you are not constantly talking about what you are going to do, you are more likely to focus on actually doing it. Talking can create a false sense of progress. When? It can make you feel accomplished without producing real results. But when you stay quiet, your only source of satisfaction becomes execution. You measure your progress by what you complete, not by what you announce. There is also a level of discipline and restraint. It takes control to hold back information, but especially when you are excited about your ideas. But that restraint is what preserves the power of your vision. When? It keeps your energy directed toward growth instead of validation. And it ensures that when your plans are finally revealed, when? They are not just ideas, they are realities. When the time is right, your results will introduce your plans for you. When? You will not need to convince people because they will see the evidence. What was once private will become visible, and it will carry a level of impact that words could never achieve. Until then, protect what you are building. Not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Time is your greatest asset. Protect it fiercely. It is the one resource that is given equally to everyone, yet it is the one most carelessly wasted. You can recover money, rebuild opportunities, and regain lost positions, but time, once gone, is gone forever. That is what makes it so valuable. Every second you spend is an investment, whether you realize it or not, and the return on that investment depends entirely on how wisely you use it. Most people treat time casually because they do not see it leaving. It does not make noise when it goes. It does not announce its departure. It simply slips away, moment by moment, until one day you look back and realize you spent years on things that added no value to your life. This is why protecting your time requires awareness. You must become conscious of where your hours are going and intentional about where they should go. Protecting your time means setting boundaries. Not every request deserves a yes. Not every invitation deserves your presence. Not every conversation deserves your attention. When you say yes to everything, you lose control over your own life. When your time becomes controlled by other people's priorities instead of your own purpose. Strength is found in the ability to say no without guilt, knowing that every no is a yes to something more important. When distractions are the greatest thieves of time. They come in forms that seem harmless, endless scrolling, unnecessary conversations, constant notifications, but their impact is significant. They break your focus, slow your progress, and scatter your energy. When your attention is divided, your results are weakened. But when you protect your time from these distractions, you create space for deep work, clear thinking, and meaningful progress. There is also a discipline required in how you use your time. When it is not enough to be busy, you must be productive. Being busy can give the illusion of progress, but productivity produces results. When you can spend an entire day occupied with tasks that do not move your life forward. That is why you must evaluate not just how much time you are spending, but what you are spending it on. Every action should have purpose, when every effort should have direction. Protecting your time also means prioritizing growth. If your schedule is filled with activities that do not develop you, then your future will reflect that lack of investment. Time must be allocated to learning, improving, and building. These are the activities that create long-term value. They may not always provide immediate results, but they shape who you become and what you are capable of achieving. Another important aspect is consistency. Time, when used consistently, compounds. Small efforts repeated daily produce significant outcomes over time. But inconsistency breaks that cycle. When you waste time today, you are not just losing today, you are interrupting the momentum that could have built your tomorrow. Protecting your time means showing up every day with intention, even when you do not feel like it. It also requires you to recognize that time is limited. This awareness is not meant to create pressure, but clarity. When you understand that your time is finite, you begin to make better decisions. You stop engaging in meaningless activities. You become more selective about your commitments. You start focusing on what truly matters. Because you realize you do not have the luxury to waste your life on things that do not contribute to your purpose. When you protect your time, you protect your future. Every disciplined hour becomes a building block for something greater. Every focused moment brings you closer to your goals. And every wise decision about your time strengthens your position in life. Time is not just something you have, it is something you are given to use. And how you use it will determine what you become. When discipline is louder than words, anyone can speak about their goals, their intentions, and their dreams, but not everyone is willing to live in a way that proves them. Words are easy. They require no sacrifice, no consistency, no real commitment. But discipline demands action. It requires you to show up when you don't feel like it. When? To stay focused when distractions are everywhere, and to continue moving forward when results are not immediate. When? There is a difference between talking about what you will do and demonstrating what you are doing. Words create expectations. When? But discipline produces evidence. Over time, people stop listening to what you say and start watching what you do. Your habits begin to speak for you. Your consistency becomes your voice. When and what you repeatedly do carries more weight than anything you could ever explain. Discipline operates in silence. When it does not announce itself and it does not seek attention. It is built in the early mornings, in the late nights. When? In the moments when no one is watching. It is developed in the decisions you make daily, choosing focus over distraction. When? Effort over excuses and growth over comfort. These choices may seem small, but when repeated over time, when they create a pattern that defines your life. One of the reasons discipline is so powerful is because it removes dependence on motivation. Motivation is unpredictable. Some days it is strong and other days it is absent. If you rely on how you feel, your progress will be inconsistent. When? But discipline does not depend on feelings. It operates on commitment. It allows you to take action regardless of your mood, when your environment, or your circumstances. This is what creates stability in your growth. Discipline also builds trust, not just with others, but with yourself. Every time you follow through on what you said you would do, you strengthen your self-belief. You prove to yourself that you are reliable, that you are capable, and that you can be counted on. On the other hand, when? Every time you break your own commitments, you weaken that trust. Over time, when? This internal relationship determines how confidently you pursue your goals. There is also a level of respect that discipline commands. People may be impressed by words, but they respect consistency. When someone sees that you are committed, that you are focused, that you continue to produce results over time, they begin to take you seriously. You do not have to convince them, because your actions have already done that for you. Discipline exposes the difference between interest and commitment. When you are only interested in something, you do it when it is convenient. When you are committed, when you do it regardless of the circumstances. Discipline is the proof of that commitment. When it shows that your goals are not just ideas in your mind, but priorities in your life. It also eliminates excuses. When you are disciplined, you stop looking for reasons why something cannot be done and start finding ways to make it happen. You take responsibility for your actions and your outcomes, instead of blaming time, conditions, or other people. When you adjust your approach and keep moving forward. This mindset creates progress where others remain stuck. When another important aspect of discipline is that it compounds over time. The effort you put in today may not produce immediate results, but it contributes to something greater. Each disciplined action builds on the previous one, creating momentum that becomes difficult to stop. Eventually, what once required effort becomes a habit, and what once felt challenging becomes part of who you are. Discipline also protects you from self-sabotage. When it keeps you aligned with your goals even when distractions try to pull you away. It acts as a guide, reminding you of what truly matters. Without it, it is easy to drift, to lose focus and to settle for less than what you are capable of achieving. Discipline speaks through results. It shows up in your growth, your achievements, and your ability to stay consistent over time. You do not need to constantly explain your plans or defend your ambitions when your actions are aligned with them. People will see it. They will recognize it. Because while words can capture attention for a moment, discipline sustains it. And over time, it becomes the loudest statement you could ever make. Focus eliminates distractions and multiplies results. When it is the ability to direct your attention with intention and refuse anything that does not align with your purpose. In a world filled with constant noise, endless options, and competing priorities, focus has become rare, and that is exactly why it is powerful. Most people are not lacking talent or opportunity, they are lacking concentration. Their energy is scattered across too many things, and as a result, they produce very little. Distraction is not always obvious. When it does not always come as something negative. Sometimes it comes disguised as opportunities, conversations, or activities that seem harmless but slowly pull you away from your direction. Every time your attention shifts unnecessarily, when your momentum is interrupted, it takes time to refocus, to regain clarity, and to rebuild the rhythm you lost. When this happens repeatedly, your progress becomes slow and inconsistent. Focus, on the other hand, creates intensity. It allows you to go deeper instead of wider. Instead of doing many things at an average level, when you concentrate on a few things and execute them at a high level, this is where results begin to multiply. When your attention is fully invested in one direction, your effort becomes more effective. Your thinking becomes clearer. And your actions become more precise. There is also a discipline required to maintain focus. It means saying no to things that are good but not necessary. It means limiting access to anything that competes for your attention. It requires you to create an environment that supports your concentration rather than disrupts it. This may involve reducing noise, setting boundaries, or even distancing yourself from people who do not respect your time and direction. Focus is closely connected to clarity. When you are clear about what you want, it becomes easier to ignore what you do not need. But when your vision is uncertain, everything begins to look important. This is why many people struggle with distractions. They have not clearly defined their priorities. Once your purpose is clear, your decisions become simpler. You no longer waste time debating what to do because you already know what matters most. Another powerful aspect of focus is that it builds momentum. When you consistently direct your energy toward one goal, you begin to see progress. That progress creates motivation, and that motivation strengthens your commitment. Over time, this cycle becomes self-sustaining. But if your focus is constantly shifting, you break that cycle before it has a chance to develop. You keep starting over instead of moving forward. Focus also sharpens your skills. Repetition and concentration allow you to improve faster. When you dedicate your time to a specific area, you gain deeper understanding and greater mastery. This level of development is difficult to achieve when your attention is divided. Mastery requires immersion, and immersion requires focus. It is important to understand that focus is not about doing more. It is about doing less. but better. It is about removing what is unnecessary so that what remains can receive your full attention. This is where multiplication happens. When your energy is no longer diluted, your output increases without requiring more effort. You become more efficient, more productive, and more effective. Focus also protects your mental energy. Every decision you make, every distraction you entertain, consumes a portion of your attention. When your mind is overloaded, your ability to think clearly is reduced. But when you simplify your focus, you reduce mental clutter. This creates space for better ideas, stronger decisions, and more strategic actions. Focus determines the quality of your results. It is not just about how hard you work, but how well your effort is directed. Two people can invest the same amount of time, but the one with greater focus will always achieve more. Because while effort creates movement, focus creates progress. When you learn to control your attention, you begin to control your outcomes. And when your attention is aligned with your purpose, your results are no longer accidental, they are intentional, consistent, and multiplied. Preparation determines your level of power. What you do before the moment arrives decides how you perform when it does. Many people desire influence, success, and authority, but they underestimate the process required to sustain it. Power is not something you step into suddenly. It is something you grow into through preparation. Without it, even the greatest opportunity can become a burden instead of a breakthrough. Every opportunity comes with a demand. It requires skill, understanding, discipline, and readiness. If those qualities are not developed beforehand, the opportunity exposes your weakness instead of elevating your strength. This is why preparation is so critical. It equips you for what you are asking for. It ensures that when the moment comes, you are not overwhelmed by it, but able to handle it with confidence and control. Preparation happens in the unseen moments. It is built in the hours of learning, practicing, refining, and improving when there is no audience and no immediate reward. It requires patience because the results are not instant. It requires commitment because the process is repetitive. But every step you take in preparation is an investment into your future capacity. You are building the ability to carry more, to do more, and to become more. There is also a difference between wishing for something and preparing for it. Many people say they want success, leadership, or influence, but their daily actions do not reflect that desire. Preparation aligns your actions with your ambitions. It moves you from intention to readiness. It transforms what you hope for into something you are actually capable of handling. Preparation also builds confidence. Not the kind that comes from words or external validation, but the kind that is rooted in competence. When you know you have put in the work, when you have practiced, studied, and developed your skills, when you approach opportunities differently. There is a calmness in your mindset because you are not relying on luck. You are relying on preparation. That confidence allows you to perform under pressure, to think clearly in challenging situations, and to respond effectively when it matters most. Another important aspect of preparation is that it reduces fear. Fear often comes from uncertainty and lack of readiness. When you are unprepared, when every challenge feels intimidating because you do not trust your ability to handle it. But when you are prepared, that fear begins to disappear. You have already done the work. You have already faced the difficulty in private. So when it appears in public, it is no longer unfamiliar. Preparation also sharpens your awareness. It helps you anticipate challenges, recognize opportunities, and make better decisions. When you begin to see things others overlook because you have trained your mind through consistent effort. When this awareness becomes a form of power because it allows you to act with precision instead of reacting out of confusion. When it is important to understand that preparation is not wasted time. It may feel slow, and it may seem like nothing is happening, but something is always being built. Your skills are improving, your mindset is strengthening, and your capacity is expanding. What feels like delay is often development, and that development is what determines how far you can go and how long you can stay there. Preparation also protects you from collapse. Many people rise quickly but fall just as fast because they skipped the process. They were given opportunities they were not ready for, and without the foundation to support their position, they could not sustain it. When preparation ensures stability, it gives you the strength to maintain what you achieve. Power is not about position, it is about capacity. It is about your ability to handle responsibility, pressure, and opportunity without losing control. And that capacity is built through preparation. What you consistently do before the moment arrives will determine what happens when it finally does. If you prepare at a high level, you will operate at a high level. And when the opportunity meets preparation, what you carry will no longer be potential. It will be power. Consistency builds unstoppable momentum. It is not the intensity of what you do once that changes your life, but the repetition of what you do daily. Many people rely on bursts of motivation, moments of energy where they give their best effort. But those moments are often followed by long periods of inactivity. This cycle creates frustration because it produces little progress. Momentum cannot be built on inconsistency. It requires steady, repeated action over time. Consistency may seem simple, but it is one of the most difficult disciplines to maintain. It demands that you show up whether you feel like it or not. It requires you to commit to the process even when the results are not visible. In the beginning, your efforts may not seem significant. The progress may feel slow, almost unnoticeable. But what you are building is not just results, you are building rhythm. And once that rhythm is established, it becomes easier to continue than to stop. Momentum begins quietly. It starts with small actions done repeatedly. Each time you follow through, you reinforce a pattern. That pattern becomes a habit, and that habit begins to carry you forward. Over time, the effort required to take action decreases because your behavior becomes automatic. What once required discipline now feels natural. This is when momentum starts to work in your favor. Inconsistency, on the other hand, resets progress. Every time you stop, you lose the rhythm you created. You have to rebuild your focus, your energy, and your commitment. This is why many people feel like they are always starting over. They are not lacking ability, they are lacking continuity. Without consistency, even the best plans remain incomplete. Consistency also builds trust in yourself. When you repeatedly do what you said you would do, you strengthen your self-confidence. You begin to see yourself as reliable when disciplined and capable. This internal trust becomes a powerful force. It pushes you to aim higher, to take on greater challenges, and to believe in your ability to succeed. But when you are inconsistent, that trust weakens. You begin to doubt yourself. When? Not because you cannot do it, because you have not proven to yourself that you will. When? There is also a compounding effect that comes with consistency. Small efforts, when repeated over time, produce results that are far greater than they appear in the beginning. One day of effort may not make a difference but 100 days of effort create transformation. This is how momentum becomes unstoppable. It builds gradually, then accelerates. At a certain point, your progress begins to multiply, and what once felt slow now feels rapid. Consistency simplifies success. It removes the need for constant decision making. Instead of asking yourself whether you should take action, when you simply act because it is part of your routine. This reduces hesitation and eliminates excuses. You are no longer negotiating with yourself, you are following a standard you have already set. It also strengthens your discipline. Each time you remain consistent, you reinforce your ability to stay committed. You train your mind to prioritize long-term results over short-term comfort. This mindset becomes part of your identity. You no longer see consistency as something you have to force. It becomes something you naturally maintain. When? Another important aspect of consistency is resilience. There will be days when progress feels difficult, when challenges arise, and when motivation is low. Consistency carries you through those moments. It keeps you moving forward, even when conditions are not ideal. This is what separates those who succeed from those who stop. When the difference is not in their circumstances, but in their commitment to continue. Consistency also creates visibility in your results. At first, the changes may be internal, your mindset, your habits, your discipline. But over time, those internal changes become external outcomes. People begin to notice the difference. When what they see as sudden success is actually the result of consistent effort that was maintained long before it became visible. Momentum, when once established, becomes a force of its own. It pushes you forward with less resistance. When it creates progress that feels natural and continuous. But that momentum is built on one thing: consistency. Without it, when nothing sustains. With it, everything grows. When you commit to consistency, you are not just taking action, you are creating a system that works for you. And over time, that system produces results that are not just significant, but unstoppable. When self-control is the foundation of true authority. Before you can lead anything, influence anyone, or handle any level of power, you must first have control over yourself. Authority is often misunderstood as the ability to control others, but real authority begins internally. It is the ability to manage your emotions, your impulses, your reactions, and your decisions regardless of the situation. Anyone can act with composure when things are easy. But self-control is revealed under pressure, when you are challenged, when you are frustrated, when things do not go your way. In those moments, your response defines your level of authority. If you are controlled by anger, distraction, or impulse, then you are not in charge. You are being driven by forces you have not mastered. But when you remain steady, measured, and intentional, When you demonstrate a level of power that goes beyond external position. Self-control creates stability. When it allows you to think clearly instead of reacting emotionally. When your emotions are unchecked, your decisions become inconsistent. When you may say things you do not mean, take actions you later regret, or abandon your goals for temporary comfort. But when you develop self-control, you create a gap between feeling and action. In that gap, when you gain the ability to choose wisely instead of reacting automatically. There is also a discipline in restraint. When not everything you feel needs to be expressed, and not every situation requires your response. Sometimes the strongest action is no action. Sometimes the most powerful statement is silence. This level of restraint shows maturity because it means you are not easily provoked or manipulated. You decide when and how to respond rather than allowing others to control your behavior. Self-control also strengthens your consistency. When it keeps you aligned with your goals, even when distractions and temptations arise. Without it, when it is easy to start strong and then lose direction. You may have clear intentions, but without control over your habits and impulses. When those intentions remain unfulfilled. Self-control ensures that your actions match your priorities, even when it is difficult. Another important aspect of self-control is that it builds credibility. People trust those who are steady, reliable, and disciplined. When others see that you can manage yourself, they become more confident in your ability to handle responsibility. When authority is not just given, it is recognized. And it is recognized in those who demonstrate control over their behavior, their words, and their decisions. Self-control also protects you from self-sabotage. Many people are not held back by external obstacles, but by their own lack of discipline. They allow temporary emotions to override long-term goals. When they give in to distractions that weaken their progress. But when you have self-control, when you are able to stay focused on what truly matters, you do not trade your future for momentary satisfaction. It also sharpens your awareness. When you are in control of yourself, you become more observant and intentional. When you notice how you respond to situations, how your habits influence your outcomes, and